You are not watching Squishing It. That ship sailed yesterday and the challenge is over. And that means I have to come up with my own name for this segment. Now, if I could give a quick recap of niching it, or excuse me, squishing it, it's that I have an extremely hard time just choosing one niche. It's extremely hard for me to just focus on one thing. I was all over the place during those 11 days. And maybe I have the ADHD, I don't know why that is. But if I did have to choose one niche, one thing way high up there would be public speaking, because I love public speaking. So it's Monday. I was thinking maybe I would tell stories on Monday, but I may also talk about the public speaking tip of the day. Today's tip has to do with notes. When you're a beginner, it's totally understandable and it's okay to use notes in your speeches, but there's a correct way and an incorrect way to do that. The correct way is to use index cards, something that's won't take up attention, and to use an outline of the speech with bullet points that's very easy to read. The incorrect way, which a lot of people will do, is just to type up the entire speech and on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and just read from that. So the index cards is definitely like the way a professional speaker would do it if they had to give like a very long speech, or they would use a teleprompter. In the Zoom age, you would probably just pull up a notes and put it on the screen. Anyway, so certain times it's not okay to use notes. Say if you're trying to be very persuasive in your speech. If you're using notes, it'll make people think like, does this person really care that much? Because they're using notes. There are certain instances where it is okay though. Like if you have a lot of facts and figures, a lot of statistics, you could pull out notes at that point and start reading them, and everyone would be like, okay, we don't expect you to memorize all these facts and figures and random numbers. So there's certain times when it's okay, but just imagine if John F. Kennedy was saying, we're gonna send a man to the moon. I can't do the impersonation, but if he was doing that while looking at notes, just imagine that. It would have been a totally different speech. So the vibe is a lot more like passionate, it's a lot more energetic, and it's just easier to connect with when you're not using notes. That's both from the speaker's point of view, because you know you have to like speak off the cuff, so there's more energy attached to that. It kind of reminds me of the movie Free Solo. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, but it's about a mountain climber who decides to climb this huge mountain cliff side without any safety harnesses or anything like that. And he talks about how when you do have all those safety mechanisms, there's a certain feeling, and it's more, you're not as focused. But when you don't have them and you're climbing this mountain and you know that if you mess up, you're gonna die, there's a level of focus that goes along with that fear and adrenaline that makes you an even better climber. So it's similar with not using notes. So obviously it's not as scary, but it's a similar type of thing where there's like more energy, more adrenaline maybe, I would say, because you know there's nothing you can lean on, and that if you forget what to say, you're gonna have to like play it off or maybe just skip it because the audience wouldn't know anyway. So the tip of the day is how to use notes. A more advanced tip that I'll give you is if you don't want to use notes, just leave them in the car. And that forces you to not use the notes. It's almost like basically free soloing your speech. So just leave your notes, leave your speech in the car. And you really want to get to that point at some level, because if you're doing professional speaking, outside speaking, you don't want to be looking at your notes beforehand, because that's not the correct way to do it, in my opinion. So this is my tip on notes. Next week I'm going to talk about an even more advanced tip having to do with notes or the lack of notes. And thank you for watching the public speaking tip of the day on the Nicheless series.